Right. Welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 2024, brought to you in partnership with our Platinum supporters, Barrier Break and Intopia, and our Gold supporters, Infoaxia and Tetralogical. Now, on the day, we unfortunately had some technical difficulties, which meant we had to abort the stream, but this is a re-recording of our very first talk of the day. So, hoping that this time around everything will go smoothly, I have the pleasure of welcoming Joel Snyder. Joel, over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. My presentation is about audio description, which, of course, is a way of making visual images accessible to people who are blind or have low vision, or anybody who simply doesn't have access to the visual at a given time on a given day. So I'm beginning with a slide that's mostly text. How do you make text accessible to someone who can't see it? Well, typically you voice it aloud, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice what I preach. Audio Description Associates, LLC, the visual made verbal, presents Audio Description Programmatic Accessibility as Inclusive Design with Joel Snyder, PhD, President, Audio Description Associates, LLC, Founding Director Emeritus, Audio Description Project, American Council of the Blind. Inclusive Design 24, Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. EDT. And at the bottom, 4 words, American Audio Description Symbol, which flank an image, actually, a logo, the logo for audio description, a white square within which are 2 letters in bold black type, an A and a D. The left side of that A is tilted just a bit to the right, and to the right of the curve in the D, 3 curved lines. Period. Why do I say that? I say that because sometimes beginning describers will go on and they're tempted to add something like, oh, they represent sound waves. Well, that's true enough. But there's nothing on the slide that indicates that for sighted people. Why would you include that information for an audience primarily of people who are blind or have low vision? No, at best, it's unnecessary. At worst, it could even seem patronizing or condescending, as though you think, oh, a blind person wouldn't ever have encountered curved lines representing sound waves. Even a congenitally blind person, sure, they grow up in the world. They learn everything everybody else learns, maybe in a different way. Sure. Here's the key. We describe, we don't explain. We show, we don't tell. So there's a little bit about audio description and a little bit about our audience, the principal audience for audio description. In his introduction to the second edition of The Mastery of Movement, Rudolf von Laban wrote, "What really happens in a theater does not occur only on the stage or in the audience, but within the magnetic current between both these poles." He suggests that the performers on stage form the active pole of this magnetic circuit and are responsible for the integrity of purpose in the performance that determines the quality of the existing current between stage and audience. But what if the exchange is interrupted or incomplete, not by lack of clarity on stage, but rather by an audience member's lack of access to full perception? How can a blind person see a film? Well, audio description, or AD, is a translation of images to words. The visual is made verbal and oral, AURAL, he points to his ear, and oral, ORAL, he points to his mouth. AD makes visual images accessible for people who are blind or have low vision using words that are succinct, vivid, imaginative, and objective. Describers convey the visual image from television and film, performing arts, museums. They provide access to those images that are not fully accessible to a significant segment of the population. In fact, more than 32 million Americans experience significant vision loss. That's from the American Foundation for the Blind in 2019. AD also provides benefits for the sighted audience who may never fully realize all that can be perceived with the eyes, who can see but may not observe. I oftentimes say on television, audio description is for people who are blind or have low vision and sighted people who want to be in the kitchen washing dishes while the show is on. First, let's consider the power of audio description as an access technique with an example of traditional audio description. I'm going to play a segment from a feature film, The Color of Paradise, major film, but I want you to experience it as a blind person would have in the movie theater about 25 years ago or something, with no audio description, just the original soundtrack. I'm not going to play the image for you, but again, it's a professional film, professional soundtrack. You should have no problem, right? Let's give it a try. Let's listen, see what we can glean, hear what we can glean by just listening to the soundtrack. Wow. Wasn't that great? It's my favorite film. Oh, no? Uh, sure. Some of you are asking yourselves, what is going on? A lot of birds. Yeah, that's right. A lot of birds. But can you imagine a blind person in the movie theater? They get to this segment. I'll tell you, after about 30 seconds, they're out of there. I don't get it. This is not for me. I don't understand what's going on. Or perhaps they're with their elbow to their friend next to them. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Yeah. And of course, if they try to talk about it, they get shushed in the movie theater and it's a mess. Oh boy, what to do? Well, let me give you an example of audio description and its power and what it does regularly these days in movie theaters, at home, on streaming services, uh, also in performing arts and museums. I'm going to play the same excerpt again, but still no image. You're blind, as it were. This time, though, I'm going to add the audio description track that I wrote and voiced about 20 years ago when this film was broadcast on national television here in the United States. I don't know. Will it make a difference? Let's try to see by listening.
Mohammed kneels and taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown, curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Mohammed's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Mohammed curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip. Mohammed starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Mohammed tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Mohammed climbs. He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Mohammed stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark. He wraps his legs around the lower trunk, then uses his arms to pull himself higher. He rises into thicker foliage and holds onto tangles of smaller branches. Gaining his footing, Mohammed stands upright and cocks his head to one side. An adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Mohammed extends his open hand. He touches a branch and runs his fingers over wide green leaves. He pats his hand down the length of the branch. His fingers trace the smooth bark of the upper branches, search the network of connecting tree limbs, and discover their joints. Above his head, Mohammed's fingers find a dense mass of woven twigs, a bird's nest. Smiling, he removes the chick from his shirt pocket and drops it gently into the nest beside another fledgling. He rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Mohammed wiggles his finger like a worm and taps the chick's open beak. Smiling, he slowly lowers his hand.
Aw, was that a bit more clear? I think so. I think so. And many people will say, boy, that first time through, it felt so long. I'm looking at my watch. I'm nodding off, whatever. But the second time, it gives you something to hold on to and holds your interest, if you will. It feels shorter and it's exactly the same length. So the question for this presentation really is, how does one incorporate accessibility, include it in the design of programming? Audio description in particular, how can it be an aesthetic innovation, a full part of work being presented? The slide, this next slide here, I have a definition of inclusive design. The theory of inclusive design describes one common approach to accessibility. The main tenets are: one, the designers consider as many different human abilities, limitations, and needs as possible. And two, These factors should be included from the beginning of the design process. Yeah, while audio description benefits a wide audience, really, not just people who are blind, sighted people, but people on the autism spectrum, people with ADHD, people learning a new language, people building literacy, many folks. It benefits a wide audience, but it's rarely considered from the beginning of the process of making a TV show or a film or a play. As a post-production activity similar to other localization accommodations like subtitling or dubbing, many filmmakers have limited awareness of the existence of audio description and even less understanding of the latest research, which suggests how the access technique can be incorporated within the development of a film. It's then not an add-on, but I like to call it an aesthetic innovation and an organic part of the work that really can benefit all people. When I coordinated funding years ago from the interdisciplinary arts projects category of the National Endowment for the Arts, and I wrote guidelines there that read in part, this category encourages experimentation in the area of accessibility as an aesthetic innovation. In other words, interdisciplinary work with sound elements that are visually accessible through the use of computer graphic technology, visual elements that are tactile or aural, innovative use of signing or audio description, movement involving older or disabled people, and so on. Well, in 1981, a formal audio description service, the world's first, was begun under the leadership of a blind woman, Dr. Margaret Pfanstiel, at the Metropolitan Washington Ear, a radio reading service in the Washington, D.C. area. Radio reading services still exist throughout the United States with the participation of volunteer readers reading the newspaper, reading magazine articles. Well, I began work as a volunteer reader at the Ear all the way back in 1972, and I was quite proud to be a founding member of its audio description service, the first in the world. Now, radio reading services are heavily dependent on volunteers, and the EAR's audio description service was also structured around volunteer contributions of time and effort. Cognizant of the limits on the time that people have who often maintain full-time employment elsewhere, audio description was conceived as a service that would be offered at only 2 performances of a theatrical run. And preparation for the audio described performances was based on the observation of maybe 2 or 3 performances early in the run of the show. This all began in performing arts. But even then, even back then, it was understood that optimally, audio description would be prepared with more in-depth observation of the theatrical event, even during rehearsals, and that audio description should be offered at every performance in the run of a show. But the limitation of that volunteer structure really prohibited that sort of arrangement. The proliferation of audio description for live theatrical events in the United States and all around the world has generally been based on this volunteer limited preview to describe performances model. So, this current practice of offering audio description in performing arts at 1 or 2 performances in the run of a show was established over 40 years ago. It has never represented equity, and in my humble opinion, really can no longer be tolerated. The belief, often stated by the founders of that first audio description service, was that the service must be offered to theaters for free or at absolutely minimal expense. If not, the theaters won't offer the service. Well, we're in a different time now, and my assertion is that access is not an add-on. It's a requirement. and a necessary cost of business. It really must be practiced by professionals who are every bit as committed to the success of every performance as every formal cast member. In fact, continuing with performing arts, a brief story about access at every performance. In 1995, I made a trip to New York City to attend a performance by the company Theater by the Blind. And it was just what you might expect. Yeah, I was quite excited. This is a troupe of actors who are blind. Well, surely the company would be using audio description. A company of blind actors would certainly want uh, to be accessible to blind audience members. I was quite eager to sample their audio description. Well, the group had no audio description as traditionally practiced. No audio description. Goodness, when I learned that, I was disappointed. I was ready to preach the gospel of audio description to these people. No, instead, TBTB, now known as Theater Breaking Through Barriers, taught me an important lesson about accessibility and universal design. According to George Ashiotis, he's a blind man and one of TBTB founders and a professional actor, audio description was so important to the mission of Theater by the Blind that it must be a part of every performance of every show. Further, it needn't be an add-on. Could be and it should be an integral part of every script, a critical part of every director's concept. So at Theater by the Blind, every production's planning and rehearsal process included consideration of audio description right from the beginning. How can the audio description be integrated within the production? Will we add maybe a narrator character that propels the action and also provides cleverly crafted description of visual elements? Perhaps the script can be modified to include descriptive elements spoken by the various characters. So in this way, the audio description becomes an inclusive process, a part of a universal design concept, helpful and aesthetically viable for all audience members. In the same way that theater that welcomes deaf audience members can be designed inclusively by employing shadow interpreters, a twin character or actor who signs is paired with a speaking character actor, or displaying subtitles. In the case of theater that is principally signed, voicers are used to match the sign with spoken or sung lines. In fact, I recently voiced the title character in a production of Julius Caesar at Gallaudet University, the world's first university for deaf students, right here in Washington. So, along the same lines, I had an opportunity to assist the Israeli company of deaf-blind actors, Nalagat, Please Touch, with the development of their audio description program and their productions. So now, fast forward to 2014, with support from the DC Aid Association for the Blind, the audio description project of the American Council of the Blind, we proposed a more expansive audio description arrangement for 2 productions at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. And interestingly enough, Arena Stage is the theater that we worked with in 1981 to premiere the very first audio described theatrical presentation. Well, now, 2014, we collaborated with Arena on an experiment. An audio describer attended rehearsals for each production, met with the stage director, the actors, the designers, scenic, costume, lighting designers, sound designers. And that describer developed an audio description script throughout the 3-week rehearsal period. That script was then available for the same describer to voice at every performance, beginning with opening night, and with, of course, an eye on stage action as changes could occur from performance to performance. The describer essentially was a cast member attending every rehearsal and performance. Well, This arrangement had two benefits over the traditional model of audio description development for live performance. First, time was available to carefully observe the theatrical process and construct descriptive language that was more thorough and considered. And number two, people desiring the service could attend any performance with no advance notice and be assured of access to the visual aspects of the production. Other innovations included Braille and large print programs, models of the set, which we put out in the lobby, props we put out in the lobby, a tactile scrapbook of costume pieces. And you know what? It was quite gratifying to note that attendance for the productions by people using audio description tripled over levels experienced at Arena using the traditional volunteer model. Now, typically, some theaters in New York City use recorded audio description, well, thereby making it available at every performance. Well, typically, recorded audio description is unavailable until well into the run of a show. And of course, a set recording for a live event is often technically and aesthetically feasible. Yeah, and of course, no blind person can then go to an opening night because the description isn't ready. Yeah, but with live audio description, the individual developing and voicing the AD, often the same person, is a trained audio describer who benefits from that close association with the production staff. He or she is like a cast member, but not really. There's no need for the individual to be an equity member. And unlike a cast member, he or she doesn't need to attend every performance beyond the first half hour or so of the show if no one has requested the audio description service. Generally, the describer is offered a set fee for the overall commitment, or with a longer run, perhaps a per show cost can be arranged. The script for the description is not recorded or even memorized, but relied upon loosely. As I often say, half an eye on the script and 1.5 eyes on the stage. It's a live performance. And the delivery of the audio description sound is made as it typically is via an infrared or FM radio system, which is already available at most performing arts spaces. Further, as with Access Theater's award-winning production of Storm Reading out of Santa Barbara, California, with that production on tour, the audio description script toured with the show and was available for use or adjustment by local trained audio describers. Indeed, in the 1990s, Access Theater and Rod Latham in Santa Barbara pioneered a system whereby an audio described script is developed through the rehearsal process for a show in close consultation with the show's artistic staff. So again, it's thus available at any and all public performances on demand at every performance with no advance notice required. So let's move to some video. I want to share with you several recent video projects that have included access as part of the whole, following the tenets of universal design, inclusive design. Members of these creative teams took responsibility for accessibility as part of the production process, eliminating the need to add a separate layer after the fact. No, the production then becomes accessible to a wider audience. And this notion allows filmmakers to meet an obligation for inclusion while incorporating innovative techniques, thus increasing the production's aesthetic viability. Hopefully. I think that the examples I'm going to show you now demonstrate how video can incorporate alternative audio description from the perspective of inclusive design, universal design, as well as its use as a novel media production technique. I have three examples for you. The first is of a Canadian show, Canadian animated show called Odd Job Jack. And they created a narrator as a part of the show that provided audio description. The second example is from another Canadian production of a live production of Hamlet, where the audio description was written in iambic pentameter, thus being in consonance with the show. And then finally, Stevie Wonder's marvelous So What the Fuss, written and produced as a straight music video, just the song. But Stevie Wonder, in his genius, decided, no, this has got to be accessible. We're gonna merge an audio description track and even have one of his friends, the rapper Busta Rhymes, voice the audio description track, so it really matched the quality of the video. Let's start with Odd Job Jack. This is the episode Donut Jack.
So we pulled up to the drive-through window of a donut shop. Our giant wiener pulled into the giant donut.
What can I get you?
3 coffees and a 12 of crullers.
Make that 10 coffees. I'm really thirsty.
A dozen coffees and, your phone number, please?
Sure. Just make sure you call when Pa's out in the field.
You're, farmer's daughter?
That's right, Sugar Glaze.
Hang on a sec. Jack, can we...
There's a cornfield round the back.
Let's go.
I awoke to see Bobby running like a madman.
Jack! Start the car! Jack!
Behind him was a farmer pursuing him on a tractor.
What's up?
We're stuck. Give me a push!
But I love him, Daddy.
Push! 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 Harder! Bobby pushed our wiener in and out of the giant donut, getting a rhythm going. Push! Till at last, release.
Let's haul wiener!
Bobby jumped aboard the wiener.
I'm gonna get me that son of a bitch.
Now that was some serious action.
Yeah, a little risque, perhaps, but I think you get the point of how audio description can become a part of the video. Here's that excerpt from a production of Hamlet on the stage, where the description was written and voiced in iambic pentameter.
I pray.
And so we go to find and teach our prince, to speak of what was learned upon the tower. A great ball is set within the castle, in the grandest room, as wide and high and clear. All paths, stairs, landings in the castle large lead to the hall of the celebration. The ball, inflamed in fire, from torches lit, is full of courtiers and ambassadors. The lords and ladies dance. They dance, and they drink with courtly manners, ply their country games. The lords spin their ladies, lift and toss them high, and all in dance and drink give joy this night. At once the king and queen enter the ball, with Polonius following in suit. The queen in velvet with jewels and trim of gold, the king with strength in new crown atop his head.
And finally, Stevie Wonder, transforming a music video into a truly accessible, via audio description, production with music, sound, and voiced description. Stevie Wonder's So What the Fuss.
All right, here's how it's going down. Now, in an urban neighborhood, teens hang out on the front stoop of a 3-story brownstone. Inside, Stevie Wonder sits at a keyboard in the center of a spacious studio. A man grabs a bass guitar off a stand and 4 women cross the dark room. As a shadowy guitarist joins them, adults of all races and ages mingle in the hall and at the party. Stevie leans close to a gold-tipped microphone as he plays. A teen on the front steps turns his head sharply. At the party, women struck by smiling and a boy in the hall listens behind their event. Stevie's backup singers dance at their mic stands. It's en vogue. Our view floats up to a vent behind them and away from a vent at the party. A lounging guest leans towards it. Nearby, A man checks out a woman swaying hips as she passes. The guests clear the room of furniture and a man sprinkles fine powder on the hardwood floor. Stevie's fingers glide over the keys. At the party, a dancer drags his toe through the powder. The lounging guest bobs his head. As two gang kids fight near storefront TV sets, the screens show explosions. Now, in Stevie's studio, the bass guitar strings turn into vibrating wall pipes that lead to the party. On the dance floor, a twirling man's hat flies off. A woman in gold heels presses against her partner. As she leans back, he feels her bare stomach. So what the fuck? Now, Stevie plays a pearly white drum set. At the party, adults and children gather in the kitchen. Stevie's bass drum becomes the tire of a car outside. The teens out front help push the stalled car. Inside, a little girl touches her mother's face. Out front, a bearded man in a wheelchair wears African beads, and a white girl's hair gets braided into cornrows by her black friend. Now a man's hands on the counter become Stevie's hands. In a diner, the white owner points an Iranian away from the counter. At the party, a woman fans herself with a hat. In a hall, a drug dealer strides ominously past the boy at the vent. Now a fat woman's hip bumps a guy in the crotch as she dances. A woman nearby laughs. Our view floats down toward the party vent and away from the studio vent. Couples at the party caress each other as they dance. Shame on them. Shame on them. Shame. As In Vogue sways together, two kids dance battle on the sidewalk. Shame on us. So what the fuck? Stevie's fingers slap the keys. The woman in gold heels wear brass knuckles on her necklace. Now our view passes through the ceiling of Stevie's studio to the party above. Loose floorboards shift underfoot. Out front, the teens dance energetically. Stevie rocks his shoulders as he plays his keyboard. As a fader on a mixboard slides down, it turns into a zipper on a woman's dress. A man eases the zipper open and reaches for his wedding ring. Now a toddler peeks into Stevie's studio. The toddler climbs onto the drum set stool. As Stevie sings into his mic, the little boy bangs drumsticks on the snare. The boy slips off the stool. A female dancer does the splits through a partner's legs. In bed, a woman dips her fingers in a jar of skin cream and rubs it over her bare leg. Now the toddler taps on the drum standing up. As a car outside rocks back and forth, a drink in a party glass wavers. The little girl's mother dances with her daughter standing on her shoes. Images of sweaty people dancing and smiling throughout the building flash rapidly. The boy in the hall honks a bicycle horn. The girl in braids hugs her friend. Now two men in plain clothes chase the drug dealer. The bearded man in a wheelchair smiles victoriously to the sky. The woman in bed kisses her partner. As the lights flicker at the party and in the studio, men lead the dealer away from the building in handcuffs. The singers and party guests continue dancing, and Stevie and the band continues doing what they do best, and it's making that feel-good music.
Yeah, you know, and if you were listening closely to the audio description, as a sighted person, you know, things get pointed out to you that you probably didn't notice. You know, the bass drum becomes the wheels of the car. The guitar strings become the pipes, the heating pipes in the apartment building. A man's hands become Stevie's hands. You know, the fader on the mixing board becomes the zipper on a woman's dress. These are things that go by quickly and you just wouldn't notice unless you were listening to the audio description, perhaps, as a sighted person. So anyway, I have a true story for you. A blind fellow was once visiting a museum with some sighted friends, and a sighted woman came up to him, had the temerity to approach him and say, "Excuse me, but what are you doing in a museum? You can't see any of the exhibits." Well, he was a little taken aback, but his response, "I'm here for the same reason anyone goes to a museum. I want to learn, I want to know, and be a part of our culture." His inability to see shouldn't deny him access to our culture. And I think it's the responsibility of any arts institution, any arts endeavor, to be as inclusive as possible. It's all about access to culture. And that's everyone's right. There's just no good reason why a person with a physical disability must also be culturally disadvantaged. No, and I want to emphasize one point. In the United States, the principal constituency for audio description, folks who are blind, have an unemployment rate of 70%, 70. In this country, we get concerned when the general unemployment rate is 4 or 5%. No, I am certain that with more meaningful access to culture, its resources, people become more informed. They become more engaged with society. They become perhaps more engaging individuals. And that could mean more employable. So with that, let me post my contact information, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have, certainly by email. My own website is audiodescribe.com. My email address is jsnyder, JSNYDER, at audiodescribe.com. The website of the American Council of the Blind's Audio Description Project is a marvelous resource. This is an initiative I founded with ACB about 14 years ago. Visit their website, adp.acb.org. And I wrote a book. Look at that, The Visual Made Verbal, a comprehensive training manual and guide to the history and applications of audio description. It's about 10 years old. We're getting ready for a second edition, but it has been translated into Braille, 2 different audiobooks, and 7 languages. You can find it on Amazon.com in English, of course. And I do want to mention another initiative of the Audio Description Project. That's our training programs for audio describers. Our 25th Audio Description Project, Audio Description Institute, will be held virtually in the spring of 2025. You can get more information about it at the website adp.acb.org. Basically, what that means is if you did not enjoy the last 45 minutes with me, you will definitely not enjoy 5 days with me. So keep that in mind. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Joel. I have to say the Stevie Wonder video left me smiling at my turned off camera. That was an amazing example. I've never seen something as integrated into the music video as that was. Yeah. So that was great stuff. So, Joel, I've seen, let me see, there were no questions. There were a few people that tuned in to the live stream despite the very last minute kind of notice. But rest assured, as I told you before, that the video itself is basically now going to be on YouTube. It's going to stay available for everybody, and we usually get quite a nice long tail as people kind of catch up with the various videos. So I'm sure there'll be comments flying in. Yeah,
I welcome their comments and questions. jsnyder at audiodescribe.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Right, so to the audience at home, whether you watched it live or you're watching it at a later date, if you like the session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to our channel to be kept in the loop on our future events. Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our supporters: Barrier Break, Intopia, InfoAxia, Tetralogical, Intuit, Adrian Rosselli LLC, Assistive Labs, the Law Office of Laney Feingold, Skyscanner, and Vispero. Joel, once again, thank you for your talk and for being so flexible to sort out this re-recording.
Thank you, Patrick.
And until next time, take care, everybody. Thank you.